Ladies and gentlemen, you already know what time it is. It is the Prince of Botch. You already know, man. The boy Dwayne is back in the building with another episode of Life's a Botch. And this is going to be a fun episode. This might actually be the most hardcore episode out of any episode we've done right here on Life's a Botch. And I use that pun very, very lightly because, well, I'm in front of a hardcore legend. And, well, if you're listening on the audio version, then you'll have to catch the video version so you can see who, but you're going to see it in the title anyways. So, ladies and gentlemen, first and foremost, thank y'all so much for 50 dope episodes of this show, actually over 50 at this point now, and we're still going consistently for you guys. So you already know I like to do this really dope and bring legendary guests on this show, man, and I couldn't get more legendary than the guests, and I'm actually going to call him an artiste because that's exactly what he has been from his matches and, need I mind you, his promos. Because, ladies and gentlemen, this guy, man, if it's one thing I can always say about this guest in front of me, it's definitely that there is not a single promo this man has never cut in a very poetic and artistic-like way to where you couldn't help but quote the Raven, nevermore. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. I'm talking about none other than the ECW legend, the hardcore legend, the WCW original, and of course, arguably the greatest WWF hardcore champion of all time. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking about none other than the one, the only, Raven. Sir, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Good. How you doing, man?
Man, doing phenomenal, sir. I'm doing phenomenal. Now, you're probably wondering, why do I have a kendo stick in my hand? Now,
I was wondering that because, and it's also taped together. It looks like it's falling apart.
Actually, it is. There is a story behind that. Here's why. This is a very kendo stick that you, my friend, actually held, and you beat one of your favorite rivals to death with this very kendo stick. I'm talking none other than the Impact Wrestling event that was held here in Atlanta 2 years ago, known as the A-Town Beatdown. And it was when they did an Impact show, and it was kind of a double taping because they did an Impact Wrestling show, but then they did a TNA anniversary show right afterwards, which featured legends like yourself and Tommy Dreamer and a lot of TNA originals from back in the day. Got to see Kid Cash come back and different things like that. And so what happened was I was ringside for that very show. And, you know, you actually made the save. You helped Tommy Dreamer in a feud he was going in with Sami Callihan and his flock, if you will. And I remember you coming out and, you know, you saved him. You basically saved him. Everybody thought really that you gave the pun, you know, you made it seem like you were actually going to do something to Dreamer, given the rivalry you guys have had, and you actually saved them. But I felt in my heart of hearts, I was like, these two have a history. So I feel like Raven's going to mess around and turn on Dreamer in some kind of fashion. And later, lo and behold, you took this very kendo stick and you proceeded to hammer it down on Tommy Dreamer. Now, how I ended up with it was because of my good deeds of helping out the production crew after the show. One of the producer ladies, actually, this kendo stick was still kind of ringside on the ground, and she actually was just like, hey, you know what? Here you go. Thank you so much for helping me out on today. And I was like, oh my gosh, I get to have a kendo stick, the very kendo stick that was just used. And so it's taped together like that because actually, man, you did a number on that guy with this thing. It was actually quite torn apart. So I had to do this to kind of doctor her up just a little bit, just to keep the form a little bit. But man, it still has its scars, its battle scars, if you will.
Still got my DNA, still got Mean Dreamer's DNA on it.
Yeah, you know, and this, given the history of you guys as hardcore legends and the blood, sweat, and tears you guys have given over the years, I could not keep this thing and make sure it lived up to its hardcore, you know, status. So I keep this baby as a wonderful trophy in hopes that one day, you know, this is a virtual interview, but one day when I get to see you again, Raven, and I get to see some of the other hardcore legends, just have nice autographs, upon this here kendo
Sure.
stick. And, definitely something that I hold near and dear to me. So he's going to probably be chilling with me for a while throughout this event just because, again, you're such a hardcore legend, man. It's only fitting to have a kendo stick handy. Why not? Why not? But
Yeah, why not?
how are you
We're
feeling this evening, man?
good.
The crazy
Where do
thing
you
about that
you said
show,
you said you live in Atlanta?
I do. Yes, sir. I'm in
Where in
Atlanta.
Atlanta? Where in
Um,
Atlanta?
so where I am is the northeastern part of Atlanta. So it's considered Gwinnett County because it's a big county.
Yeah, no,
Specifically,
I live in Atlanta.
do you really?
I lived in Vinings. Well, I just moved to Kennesaw, but just bought a house
Okay.
in Kennesaw. But I had a condo in Vinings since '97. No, since '99. I've lived in Atlanta since '97.
Wow. All those, man, I never knew that.
Yeah.
It's like, it's amazing when you find out who really lives out this way because a lot of times, like, you're used to guys kind of like, I
Well,
found out more
used to
people.
be all the WCW guys lived here, but the only
Mhm,
ones that live here still are me, the Steiners,
mhm.
Swinger, DDP, Buff, and I think everybody else has moved out of the state.
Moved out of
So
state. Man, that is so amazing. See, this is what I love about Atlanta because it's like so many people, just, wrestlers, athletes, musicians, they all live in Atlanta. And it's just amazing how big of a city yet small it is at the same
yeah.
time. You realize who's all out here. So, like, that's awesome, man. That's awesome. Well, I definitely have to connect with you off air, man. And like I said, this was a symbol, man. I had to just like, I had to keep this. When I got this, I was
Oh
like,
yeah.
this is forever coming with me. And it's actually kind of cool holding a kendo stick because now when I see as a fan what it feels like having this thing, I actually had to test hitting myself with this thing. And I'm like,
Of course.
man,
You have to.
yeah, it's like it does suck when you take shots with this thing, man. And I commend you guys so much for so many years of like battle scars from this stuff, man. Because boy, this is a way to tell any casual that doesn't believe in what we do. I'm like, okay, you want to take a shot with this kendo stick real quick? Let me show you how this feels, man. If you don't
Yeah.
feel the impact, you'll feel it all right. But man, sir, let's get into some the people definitely want to know about you that don't already know about you, man. I mean, your status is super legendary and goes on forever in terms of resume. I mean, you've been in the ring with the best of the best. And I mean, just you name it, from talent still going to this day, future talent going on right now, even to just legendary talents like yourself that all came up at the same time. So let's talk about, first and foremost, what was your background into what got you into wrestling? Like, was there anything you were into before wrestling, and or was it just always wrestling was something you wanted to do? Like, how did that come about for you, Raven?
I wanted to be a pro wrestler when I was a kid, but and then I just never thought I would, actually do it. People don't actually do that.
Yeah.
You know, um, and I was from a upper middle class white collar family, so I went to college and went to University of Delaware. But then I took a semester off, went in the Marine Corps, went to boot camp, then went into reserves, and I was going to go into the FBI or the CIA or something like that for a career, but I decided I want to be a pro wrestler. I figured, man, I got to give it a shot. I don't want to be 50 years old going, man, I could have done that. I should have done that. I didn't want to live with regrets. So I figured if I'm unsuccessful, that's okay. But at least I tried, because it doesn't really matter whether you're a success or a failure in something. It matters whether you try.
Yes.
Trying's all that matters.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I love that because, a lot of people sometimes don't really go through with their dream, like you said, when you see wrestling and like it's something you want to do, but you don't quite, and I can imagine nowadays it seems like it has easier access because internet is literally everywhere. So you can look up wrestling schools. You can literally within
Yeah,
the palm of your hand.
there were like three wrestling schools when I started. Otherwise you had to know somebody.
Man, and that's crazy trying to think about that to this day, like how back then. And I think that was part of my problem, like growing up, because I'm in a generation where like I'm young enough to know today's internet, but like growing up for me when I was like a kid watching you guys, like when you really wanted to do it, it was like internet was around, but it wasn't as
How old
instant
are
as
you?
it is now. So I'm 31. I'm 31 going on
No.
32. And I know for me, internet didn't really get like to the fray. Like, I was in the dial-up generation, of course. Like, so
Oh,
like,
were you?
yeah, so for me in my
As a
prime
kid? You
childhood,
mean as a kid?
yeah, as a kid, like
Yeah,
as
as
a
a kid,
kid,
I didn't have internet. Yeah.
yeah. You
I
see
didn't
what I
have
mean?
internet
Like,
till I was in like 20s or 30s, I guess.
oh yeah, like it's crazy, the evolution of just having things at the palm of your hand where now, like I'm at a point now where I'm still young enough where I can actually look up some things. And so wrestling school is still something that I look into in terms of even if I can't be an in-ring talent, taking my personality and using it to help business in some type of way of, ring announcing or,
Sure.
backstage interviewing, different things like that where
Hmm.
now it's at the palm of my hand to find out what schools are near me. But like at that time, watching you guys, it was like internet was around, but you couldn't really just say, okay, how do I even find, oh, there's a school for this? Like,
Well, it would
I don't,
take you 6 hours with a dial-up.
oh yeah, that was never fun. Dial up was never
I
fun.
never played on. I never used a computer till after dial-up was done. I think.
Oh man, yeah,
When was dial-up done? When did they finish up dial-up?
they finished that, I want to say mid 2000s, because at that point DSL started coming along. And then after DSL, they just basically started going all wireless internet, I believe, at that point. And that's when we were just like, oh, okay, as long as you got a router, you're pretty much able to do just about whatever. So yeah, it's amazing how they
Yeah, I'd be curious. I'd be curious, like when dial-up was officially over. Like what
yeah.
year? I bet that was like around 2000, maybe. You think?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I want to say about mid 2000s or so is when they
Because I'm trying to
definitely.
think when I first started playing on a computer, which I use so sparingly.
Mhm.
Um, like I use my phone, like if I have the news and stuff like that. But I mean, I'm not a. Basically, all I need a phone for is, besides calls, is internet and I mean email and
Uh-huh.
yeah, email and an occasional website I look on. But I don't use a computer a lot. Like I don't have
Mhm.
that. I don't have that dialed in, not dialed up, but dialed in ability like kids that were born with the computer, like you're saying, like with the
Yeah.
computer generation. Who use it like like it's nobody's business. Like I came from a generation where you didn't know how to type. Nobody knew how to type.
Hmm.
Only girls knew how to type because they had to take typing. Guys didn't take typing. Although I did
Yeah.
take 1 year of typing. I think one semester of high school was typing, and I think I maxed out at 25 words a minute with no mistakes,
Yeah.
which is horrible.
Yeah. I didn't have to take a typing class till like high school. So I know exactly what you mean. Like that was
Yeah,
like my
now they learn how to type when they're like in first grade, don't they?
first grade. It's crazy, man. Like it's just who knew, that's computers have evolved now where it's just like it's everything. I mean, I have nieces and nephews who are like able to hold a pad and like 3, 4 years old and they know how to operate it. And you're
Right.
like,
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
but so okay, so you've been into wrestling. So did you have like influences or was it just straight into it? Like you watched it and you liked it and you just got into it?
No, I had influences. I loved Michael P.S. Hayes and Jake Roberts were my two biggest influences on my career.
Mm,
Michael P.S. Hayes before you can see a lot of that in my old characters, Scotty the Body, Scotty Flamingo.
yeah,
Um, but and then you can see a lot of Jake in the Raven character.
yes,
Big influence,
definitely,
huge influence.
definitely. Yeah, I love I
Some Kevin, some
Raven
Kevin
character.
Sullivan too, some Kevin Sullivan, but
Ooh,
I made it into an amalgamation of a little bit from here, a little bit from there, and then the rest I just took from from my life.
yeah, absolutely. So tell me how much without I guess, breaking kayfabe, as they like to say. How much would you say influential when you came up with the Raven character? How much of that did incorporate into the real life version versus the character of Raven?
What do you mean?
Like, you know how sometimes with your characters, sometimes it's a blend of who you are in real
right.
life.
It's always best if it's you magnified by 10 or 100 or whatever. You're better off playing yourself because you know yourself, you know?
Yeah.
So, you know, so playing a character, you know, most of us aren't good enough actors to portray anybody but ourselves, you know, in some exaggerated way.
Agreed. And I like that advice because that's actually good advice, because I know there are people who try to figure out their ways of a character, and I've never actually heard it interpreted like how you just said that, because it would be cool whenever, let's say if I was trying to think of a character, to know like, okay, well, who are you in real life and how can you maximize that times 10?
Well, most characters are just two-dimensional. You know, I tried to be a three-dimensional character that you would understand him, that you would know why he does something, you would know exactly what he's going to do, because that's his behavior. You know, like he would have a certain type of behavior that, you know, if you put him in a certain situation, obviously this was going to happen. Yeah. And so I made it deeper and I made it deeper and I used parts of my own life and parts, you know, that I made up and parts that I felt and custom made it into something that was both me and bigger than me. And yet I found myself once I started becoming Raven, that it was like art imitated life by me becoming Raven, art imitated life. But then my life started to imitate my art, because then I started to become too deep into Raven, and my drinking got worse and my drugs got worse. And then I had to find a happy medium, you know, where he ends and I begin, you know.
Yes, love it. I love it. And that's,
you know, it was like I had to get to the point where, like, you know, it was weird. It was like close friends would call me Raven, and like real close people, and I'm like, nah, or like girlfriends would call me Raven, and I'm like, nah, you got to call me Scott. You know, I mean, like there has to be a boundary. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I prefer people that don't know me to call me Raven, because they don't know me. You know, they only know Raven.
Yeah.
And that's a big pet peeve of mine. Like when fans call you by your real name, like they think they know you.
Yeah.
Because and of course the argument from the fans are that you know it's like an actor, you're playing a role, you're not that person. So except we play one role for life, more or less. And then, as you know, you don't call Tom Cruise, you know, his roles, but Tom Cruise plays different roles. You know what I mean? You do call you don't call Marilyn Manson Brian Warner.
This is true.
Right. That's the same thing with wrestling. Wrestling, you know, you're playing one character, and it's usually an extension of yourself. So when people call you by your real name, it's irritating because they don't know you. But by the same token, it's also weird when like if your doctor calls you that, or your, you know, or, you know, by your wrestling name, or you know, or your friend, you know, close friends or relatives, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they should call you by, you know, they shouldn't, because then it's like, then you're buying into your own gimmick, you know, believing your own hype, you know. So there's got to be a line somewhere. But it's weird though. Like you know, when I was at the peak of my fame, you know, in WCW and WWE, you know, fans would I mean, like, you know, like you call places, like let's say you're calling to make a doctor's appointment, you know, and they go, "What's your name?" You go, "Raven." And you're like, they're like, "Raven? Raven what?" I'm like, "Oh yeah," you know. It's like, yeah, you had to separate the two because it's weird, you know what I mean? But you're used to being Raven all the time. This is a weird thing.
I can imagine, especially as you mentioned, like I think about the times in, like when you mentioned WCW and WWE, especially at a time where those two companies were going head to head. I can imagine with the schedule and being on the road all the time, as you mentioned, like to be that character literally almost every night or every other night when you're
Yeah,
wrestling.
6 nights a week.
Yeah, like that has to be one of those things
And
where
and wrestlers 90% of the time call you by your wrestling name. Just
oh,
because, we don't know each other's real names, and it's kind of pretentious to go figure out somebody's real name and just go call them by it if you don't know them, because you don't know them.
yeah,
And then you get in the habit of calling them by their real name, by their wrestling name, because that's what you're used to. You know what I mean? So, like Billy Gunn goes there as Billy. You know what I mean? I would never call him his real name. I could. It would be so weird to call him that, but it's also must be weird for him. Like if he goes to when he goes to the doctor and the doctor goes, hey, and he calls him by his real name. You know what I mean?
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I can relate to that. I do music myself, so when I'm not a hostess here, when I'm not hosting, generally that's what I go through separating the artist.
Wait. One other thing about the Billy. The reason with Billy, it's more like a name, like the real name. It's more odd because it's a real name. Like Raven isn't. Raven's a one-word name. It's not necessarily like a person's name. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's but like Billy Gunn, if you just call him Billy all the time, I'll tell you, it was like when I was in WWE, WWF, when I was a producer for Monday Night Raw, when I was Johnny Polo, they all thought my name. Everybody in the office thought my name was Johnny. So when I came back as Raven years later, they would still call me Johnny. And then Johnny was, Scott's my real name, but they would call me Johnny because they just assumed that Johnny was my real first name. They probably figured Polo was an affectation, but a moniker, but they figured Johnny was probably my. So it's funny. So I guess that's why with actual names, like if you're, say you're a character like the Undertaker, nobody's going to call you that. Hey, it's not a name. It's not a household. It's not a regular name. It's not a regular person's name. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Or the Big Boss Man or something like that. The Disco Inferno.
Yeah.
So it's weird in that sense, but it's also weird when fans try to, because it's also irritating. Back to that point, when fans try to call you by your real name, because it's like they're trying to ingratiate themselves with you, and it's pretentious because it's like you don't know me well enough to call me that, and you're only doing that so that you can sound like you're cool. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And it actually works against you. It makes you uncool.
It makes you uncool. There you go. Yeah. It's like get to know a person first before you try to call them by the first name. It's easy to Google it. So I totally understand you on that, Mr. Raven, and that's why it's like. You really have been the personification of your character in terms of like literally letting people know like it was guys like you and the Jeff Hardys and so many of the world that where I felt like y'all made it cool to be like a social outcast type where like I ain't got to be Mr. Popular out here trying to fit in with everybody else. Like, you know what? If I want to dress the way I want to dress and look the way I want to look, dye my hair or, anything, like it was so cool. Like I was actually watching one of your matches from WWE where it was actually a match with you and Jeff Hardy. I believe that was on a Monday Night Raw. And it was right around time when they started doing the separate shows. So you guys were like Raw guys. And literally, I can hear on commentary, because as a kid, you pay attention to commentary, but you don't really pay attention to commentary because you're watching the matches and
I disagree with you. See, I paid attention to the commentary.
Yeah, really?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. To me, what I loved about wrestling was the soap opera, not the matches were just an extra part of it that made it better. But it was the soap opera of wrestling that I loved. The morality play, the good versus evil, and so to me, like, I didn't go for like the matches were second to the plot lines,
Okay.
As opposed to some people like the matches, they're all about the matches, like the, the stooge sheet reading people that, you know, they'll give a match that got booed 5 stars, but the people were bored because then it was all, you know, they didn't tell a story. You know what I mean? They just did a bunch of high spots. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, and I do agree.
So, yeah, you know, it's like in the movie world, if you make just a movie about car crashes, people are going to shit on it. You know what I mean? Because there's no there's no storyline.
Yes, sir.
But in wrestling, if you do a storyline, if you do a match with all car crashes and no story, people are gonna, you know, the internet is gonna pop for it and give it good reviews, which is ridiculous. But it's not the main population of wrestling fans. When you draw in the casual audience, they're there for the plot. They're there for the storylines and the characters, and they're not. The matches are just ancillary. It happens to take place in an athletic contest. It's, you know, it's like General Hospital, but it takes place in a wrestling ring as opposed to a hospital. That's why they're there. That's how you get the casual fans. You know, that's how you get the majority of fans. But the internet is composed of a very vocal minority that chooses, that has a bigger say, say in what, not the say, but they have a bigger influence on what goes on with up and coming people, because up and comers, they don't have the big stars to teach them how to wrestle, you know, not just how to do high spots. And also the only way they're going to get noticed is if they do a bunch of crazy high spots. So it's a self-defeating system.
Yeah,
it just lends itself to more car wrecks and less plot line, less psychology.
You know, and I agree with that, because as much as I like,
well, of course you do.
Yeah, because
how could you not?
I mean, because you're telling the truth here. Like, it's like I like the wrestling side of things, but I also like the character side, because you do remember, like, people will knock WWE these days for certain things, and I get it when they say that the product's not at its best, but like they still focus on trying to create characters. You know, like when they talk about this new version of NXT right now, they are working on like giving you characters again, where it's like something you're gonna remember, like you remember a Raven or the Godfather or Val Venus or a Kurt Angle.
But I'm not saying there's anything wrong with being super athletic and doing crazy high spots. I'm just saying, but you have to. It's, you know, I always go back to Elix Skipper did the most amazing move in the history of wrestling. They had a big cage in TNA. Yeah, it's a high cage. It's not the old NWA short cage. I remember. Yeah, and it's the high cage, and he walked the top rope, from corner to corner, the top of the cage, nothing to hold on to. You know, like the Undertaker walks the top rope, but he holds your arm to balance himself. Absolutely. He walked the top of the cage with nothing to hold on to, and then when he finally got to the next set, he did a Frankensteiner, but it wasn't even the finish. Man, the greatest move ever, and it wasn't even the finish. Nobody remembers it except me. And it's only because, like I used to tell Elix, I go, if you're not over as a character, they don't care. You like, you can keep learning moves and keep building your arsenal of cool stuff to do, but you have to be over with the people. You have to build your character and develop that. And nobody works on that really, or at least, you know, well, I don't know. I don't watch it anymore, so I don't know. So maybe they do now, but they didn't, and it's probably because it's harder, it's more difficult, you know, and if you're very athletic, it's easier to be very athletic. You know what I mean? Yeah, you know, I was a shitty athlete, so you know, so I was good enough to look like I was good enough that I could, and I was able to recognize, like, study people's body language, so that I was able to emulate and look like a good athlete. But I'm not a good. I was a mid-carder at best, like in high school. You know what I mean? In athletics, and a mid-card, or you know, in wrestling. I mean, I started as a wrestler, but I was but you know, my record was like 6-8. You know, usually everybody's like 14-1, or you know, or 12-2. Or 2-12. You know, usually they're one or the other, but I was in the middle. I was a mid-carder. Very few mid-carders in high school wrestling. Oh man. But that's only because I didn't do cardio. But so if I didn't pin the guy in the first 2 minutes and I was getting pinned, I'm off on a weight tangent. But yeah, I even had a finisher in high school too. So, Like, because we were all big wrestling fans. That's why I got into high school wrestling, because I was a pro wrestling fan, you know?
Absolutely. And you got to see the difference between the two, because I know a lot of people realize, even though you can take high school wrestling, college wrestling, and you can incorporate that.
It's totally different.
Yeah, it's so different. And but
yeah, but that's the reason I did it, though, you know, because you know, I figured, you know, and it was a solo sport, so I could get individual glory, you know, which I like.
I love that. That's awesome, man. That is, you see, that's really cool that wrestling just has that full connection with you that led you to the business the way it did. So, you know, what I've always wondered though is like, how did you get that? You know, because my first, believe it or not, I knew about you from WCW, of course, but like I really got to see a lot of your matches when you made that transition to WWE, because of course with WCW I played the games as well. So I remember the infamous promos that they had with, I believe that was WCW NWO Thunder, I believe it was. And like whenever you selected a WCW guy, it would show your picture, but then all of a sudden there'd be a graphic of you cutting a promo. And like yours would always be one of my favorites, because you look, you just had this look like man, I don't know why you trying to pick me, but you would literally like you would like
disinterest.
Yeah, like it was like you had this look where it was just like, you can pick me if you want, but you don't need to. But what about me? You know, what about Raven?
Because it's all part of the character. You know, you have to be your character whenever you're on camera. You know, the minute you walk through the curtain till the minute you're back in the curtain, you're that character. You know.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and you felt that for sure. And I always wondered, you know, because of the kayfabe, like you kept kayfabe alive. I take it with your character. Usually, like if you were in a public place, maybe like Raven would be Raven. I take it like because
it was me. So I mean, it was me magnified. So no, I wouldn't go to the I was just being myself. You know what I mean? I wouldn't. Yeah, there's really no reason to kayfabe. I mean, you couldn't kayfabe anymore because it was way past. You know, kayfabe had been broken. You know, with the internet especially. You know, broke. You know, giving away everything. But I also look. When I got into business in '87. You had to tell people it was real, which was embarrassing because it looked so fake. You know, like it looks much more real now than it did then. And back then it was supposed to be realistic, but for the majority of matches, they look totally fake. You know, they look like bullshit. And and so you would tell people that people would go, "Hey, is wrestling real?" And they knew it wasn't, but they didn't know 100% for sure, so they wanted confirmation. And they'd go, and so you'd have to go, "Yes, it's real." And then of course they'd go, "No, it's not." But the weird thing is if you go, "No, it's not," to go, "Well, I saw this one match that was real," and you go, "Nope, that was fake too," and they go, that was real. I guarantee those people were hitting each other for real. So no matter which way you went, they would go the opposite way just because it either confirmed what they thought or or it wasn't confirming what they wanted.
You know, I agree. It for me, I was that kid at that time, because when I would have those who were non-wrestling fans, like, hey, what you watching that for? That's fake. We'd be fighting and arguing up and down.
Well, Archie Bunker said it best. He said, Meathead goes, Archie Bunker was on a TV show for listeners, younger listeners, All in the Family. He was in a TV show called All in the Family. It was a big time show in the 70s. And the character was a racist and xenophobe, but whatever. Anyway, but the character was asked, he goes, "Why do you watch wrestling? It's fake." And he goes, "Look," he goes, "they may know who's going to win, but I don't know who's going to win." And that's it. It's because you don't know who's going to win. You know, it's a drama. And that's also why it has to be plot driven and character driven, because it's not real. You know, I mean, and let's face it, UFC's gotten so much bigger as characters, you know, as Conor McGregor and John Jones and bigger stars, you become bigger stars, the product grows, you know, and when the wrestlers are a bunch of no names, you know, the fighters are a bunch of no names. People don't tune in. That's why they
tune
don't tune in as much for their. I watch it religiously every week, you know, every Saturday.
Yeah.
But most shows people don't watch because it doesn't have any stars on it. Because it's all about stars, you know, stars telling stories.
I totally agree, and you're right. That's what is missing, but it's making its comeback. It is in a lot of fields. You know, even with boxing, we just saw Fury and Wilder. You know,
Right,
reminding
yeah.
people of boxing, like when it was at its peak in the '90s, and even I guess you could say early mid 2000s. Like when heavyweight division is at its peak with characters, it just makes boxing that much more enjoyable. So
Right. I used to be a big boxing fan in certain periods.
mhm,
Um, and then you know, then I'd stop watching, then I'd become a fan again, I'd stop watching.
mhm.
And then I just started watching again only because of the Fury Wilder fight. You know,
Yeah.
I actually bought the pay-per-view. You know, I haven't bought a boxing fight pay-per-view, I don't think ever, maybe.
Wow.
Maybe ever. I might have bought one, I'm sure, somewhere, but not that I can think of.
That says a lot. That right there says a lot because that's a long history of fights over the years.
Yeah, well, I'm sure. No, I bought Tyson fights. I'm sure I bought Tyson fights. Yeah.
Tyson fights. Were you ever mad at those Tyson fights, knowing how quickly they would
Oh,
probably?
I hated it. I hated it. Hated it.
Oh man, like everybody, I remember being so angry because they were like, "Man, I paid this much, and he just knocked him out in like 30 seconds." And you're like,
Yeah, but the casual fan, generally enjoyed it though because they came to see a knockout. You know, they wanted to. You know, it was like they came to see a squash match.
yeah, exactly.
Tyson would draw against no names. You know, that's how big a star he was.
Man, and you gotta love that. You gotta love it. You gotta love that. So
I'm glad that he gets his respect now as a cool dude. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
because he was just a problem child. You know what I mean? He had you know, the guy talks with a squeaky voice. You know what I mean? You know, the guy had to be made fun of so much back as a kid.
Yeah, you know, a lot of people we've seen, legends especially, like I said, no matter the sport from UFC, WWE, and you know, wrestling and everything, you see people get more of their respect the older they go because it's like in the moment, you know how they say you never know what you got till it's gone. But like when they're done, like a Tom Brady or somebody, when he's done, you'll be like,
Yeah, people
man,
will start liking him eventually, and then they hate him now, but they'll like him.
yeah,
But look at Ali. Ali was despised. Ali, people would spit on his. Oh my God, he was the most hated man on the planet, and now
mhm.
and then he became the most beloved man on the planet, and nothing changed about him.
Nothing.
Nothing.
You know, I say that with all the greats and what, you know, what we appreciate is that, you know, appreciate them now. I mean, I'm guilty of it. There'll be like, oh man, I hate that guy. He's always winning. But then, you know, you appreciate it because you know that's greatness that you're seeing.
Right.
And it's a beautiful thing, man. So, you know, back to you, Mr. Raven, of course, with your career. I will say, in your time in WWE, do you know one of my personal favorite matches of yours? I really enjoyed your hardcore run for sure, just being hardcore champion because I would like, you know, say that honestly as a kid that was probably one of my favorite titles just because I really did like that 24/7.
Yeah, it was
crazy.
great. I loved it.
Like you could tell looking back as I've gotten older and rewatched a lot of those matches, like okay, sure they seem short, right? Like in terms of like when you look at a generation where matches are like going the distance, you look at those matches, you're like, man, they were pretty quick, but at the same time they were still entertaining, and you could tell
They
you
were
guys have a
entertaining as
lot of fun.
shit.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know, but why mine? I would maintain were better than everybody else's.
mm-hmm.
Were because I used psychology. Like I didn't. Everybody else, the minute they got in a hardcore match, just puts threw psychology away and just hit each other back and forth. You know, so it's just a back and forth match, which doesn't build any drama. You know, so. But I told a story. You know, the babyface gets shine, the heel gets heat, and the babyface makes a comeback. You know, and when you do it that way, you get much better reaction. You know, why I like the hardcore stuff is because it gave me more props to use. Like it gave me more, you know, so if I could already tell a great story with psychology with just wrestling moves, if I add in all these other flavors, it just adds to the product if you know how to do it right. You know, it's like, why hit a guy with a chair in the head if you could drop toe hold him in a chair? You know what I mean?
This is true.
Same with he accomplished the same thing, but it's more interesting, it's more creative, it's more dramatic. You know, that's why I always liked Sabu's way, where he would throw the chair at your head.
Oh yeah.
Like instead of swinging it, he'd throw it at you.
Throw it at you. Yeah.
And it would, and that way makes the best noise too, because you can, as you're coming up to feed for it, you can smash your hands against the chair as it's coming, and knock it away from you, and it makes so much noise that it, because the fans only hear it. They can see it and they can hear it, but they can't feel it.
Yeah.
So, and that's why selling is so important. To get on another subject of mine, a pet peeve. People don't sell enough, but whatever.
Yeah. I noticed that your selling was definitely an underrated tip, just in those hardcore matches, because I would watch how you would sell things, and that actually led to my point, because of those hardcore matches, there's a couple that stuck out to me that I like. I even really went back and rewatched a few of them, and
the Rhino one.
Okay, so my favorite one for you was definitely WrestleMania 17, the triple threat match that you had with Big Show and Kane. Man, let me tell you, just that the story you were able to tell with those two in that match, like, was just from the moment Kane just got out there and literally, like, you're out there like with the girl. You know, I always loved the shopping cart full of goodies. You know. Like, you were the only wrestler to ever do that. And I just love how you would just come out there and just, like, literally, okay, I'm finna just throw this out, throw this out.
Well, that had psychology behind it, because Vince wouldn't want you to put stuff under the ring that didn't belong there, because he's like, why would it be under the ring?
Right.
So I wanted to have all the props available. I didn't want to have to go hunt for them and go, either look under the ring or go back to the back and get them. I brought them out with me. That way they're all there, saves time and energy.
Oh yeah, because you were out there, like, even while Kane's making that long dramatic entrance that he does, you were out there like, all right, cool. You coming out, do your thing. I'm just gonna keep shopping and grabbing goodies, and then next thing you know, there it is. Like, the psychology is just straight as the match even starts. Like, he looks, he notices you're there, and then, like, he's like, I'm coming right after you, and, like, y'all just start going at it. Big Show's not even there yet, and then next thing you know, boom, it just turned into like a massacre from there the moment he got out. And then you guys are just fighting all over the arena. And like you said, the glass spot was one of my favorites, because I was just like, as a kid, I'm like, holy crap.
Yeah.
He just tossed it through the glass. Like,
and that was cool.
Seeing Big Show and Kane go through the door, and then you come sneaking in and like, all right, cool. Both the big guys are down. Let me throw this table on him. And, you're trying to get away. And I love how you always did that with every match. Like, you would fight, but then you'd be like, okay, I'm gonna just, I'm out. Like, I'm just gonna go ahead and take my title and run away. And then, like, if you had an opportunity to get that pin, you would get that pin.
Well, people always think it's hard to tell people, but just because you're retreating doesn't mean you're cowardly. I mean, but if you're a heel, then that's fine. You want to be cowardly, so you want people to think you're being cowardly. But it's also if your character is too tough to be cowardly, which which is such a prime heel characteristic, if you're too tough for that, then you can just take it like a Terry Gordy would do it. He would do a strategic retreat. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Like Terry Gordy was the best at getting beat up and then walking away without and fighting, getting out of the way from the violent, from getting hit, and it was like, is he being a coward or is he being tactical? You know what I mean?
Right. And you can tell, like, looking back at it, that's why I know a lot of people will say that Crash rivaled you with his run, but I would say arguably you really were like the greatest hardcore champion.
Thank you.
Of that time, because like you really just, I remember you made me say, man, I wish Raven would lose that title. I swear. Every time you
that's like the best compliments you ever get. The best compliments I get are when people go up to my friends and go, is he really that big a dick in real life? That's like the ultimate compliment. It's like people think that, first when my friends would come up to me and say, like, I don't want you to hurt your feelings, but this guy says, but somebody, one of you, this guy come up to me and say that, I go, no, that's what I want. That's what I want people to go, that guy's an asshole,
Yeah, I know. It's funny too, and that goes back to the kayfabe when I asked you that question earlier, because I actually experienced that once with you, not myself personally, but like when I was a kid, I remember somebody, I was with some friends, and somebody had a story to tell about you once where they said, they were like, yeah, man, that guy Raven, man, he's a dick. Like they were like, man, I tried to come up to that man and say what's up. You're like, hey, you know, I think they said you were like eating breakfast or something, and they just wanted to come say hi. And they were like, man, he didn't look at nobody. He was a dick. And I was like, is he really like that? Like, I don't know.
Well,
Like,
I try not to be like that's a little different. Like I don't like to be a dick when people ask for autographs. So I'm gonna say that they were either I was in a really shitty mood
mm-hmm.
or they were bothering me, and I'm like, just can you come back when I'm done eating? You know,
Yeah.
and they didn't. You know, but no, when I'm away from the building, I see. That's why I don't like. That's why kayfabe is a kind of a good thing in certain ways that it's dead because you know you have to give the fans time, you know, because you know at least a little bit of time before they become annoying. At least a little bit of time, just because they're the ones that pay your salary. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
So yeah, so I tried not to take it to that extreme. You know, I mean, I want them to call me, think I'm a dick because of my character on TV, not because they met me and think I'm a dick. That's not so good. But
yeah, I know, man. And that's, it was just it was a curiosity, which is like, this is how I know fate is, as you know, Raven would say, you know, fate has brought us to this moment, you know, because fate is just showing me that, hey, Raven's a good guy. And I could tell that really from just previous interviews I've watched and seen
yeah,
you do. I'm like, Raven's a good dude. You can tell he's a
yeah,
good dude, man.
yeah,
Like,
I am.
you know, but man, honestly, you have really just showed people that, you know, like I said, I could go on with some of the matches I've really liked. I've always enjoyed
But
your
we're
rivalry.
running out of time though.
We are. So that's why I said, you know, honestly, I thank you
No, we
so
got a
much.
few more minutes. We got a few more minutes.
You got a few more minutes? Okay, yeah. Man. So I'll just sum it up by saying this, Mr.
No, you can finish what you're talking about. It's all right.
Oh no, you're good, sir. You're good. Like, see, I was gonna say my favorite rivalry with you has always been what you and Jeff Hardy did, not just in WWE, but what you guys did in TNA.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You know, I think about the spots you guys did. I had a Jeff Hardy DVD where it had some of his best matches from his first time around there, and I would watch the match you and him had over and over because they had that cage match where like that spot that you took where you like on all of these tables.
Yeah, yeah.
Hardy just jumps off the cage, and that was like a phenomenal, crazy, holy crap ending, man. And even TNA just showcasing you and some of your like greatest TNA matches. Man, you put on clinics for, you know, TNA, and I was just like, man.
Well, you know what the sad thing is? I thank you for recognizing that and appreciating that. But the sad thing is I'm like a rebounder in a way. Like I'm under, like, rebounders don't get noticed, but guys who sell don't get noticed as much. Like, you know, like it's always Jeff Hardy did all these cool things, but you don't say Raven did some amazing selling. You know, people don't think of that. And I think I sold as well or better than anybody in the business because that's what I was good at, and that's also what I believe is the best. You know, is the most important, one of the most important things besides psychology.
I agree.
But you don't get credit for that. Like, fans don't go, man, he sold his ass off. You know what I mean? Like, fans go, wow, look at that guy hit that big move. You know, and it's not like the guy who took the move, you know, gets the props. You know, so it's like being a rebounder. It's, you know, like, you know, you don't get called, you know, like my matches wouldn't get, you know, from the sheets wouldn't get 5 stars, you know, but I think if you looked at them, you know, like, not that I care, I mean, it's no big deal, but I just feel like it's an underrated tool. It's the most underrated tool there is because just because it's so important, but it's not recognized because the way today's style is, you know, and you know, like back in the day, you know, I guess, but it's respected among the boys. It's just not respected as much by the fans because it's like I said, it's like being a rebounder. So thank you for recognizing that. That was my point. Thank you for recognizing that.
Absolutely. The selling again, like you said, you can't put on a good match without a proper partner that's going to make you look good and help and keep you safe. And I know you've kept a lot of the talent safe and also, like you said, selling, but even when you've done things on your end, because you've had phenomenal matches, like I said, where I'm glad Impact showcased your highlights of matches you've had where you went over and you were selling.
On my DVD, my greatest matches DVD, or my greatest TNA matches, all my matches I picked them, they were all matches I lost. I'm the only one who picks all losing matches on this DVD, but those are my best matches, you know?
Yeah. But you had a Monsters Ball though, where or no, it wasn't a Monsters Ball. Was it a Monsters Ball? I think it was a Monsters Ball. I know you won the Impact NWA Championship where you came, and I know
that was a Monsters Balls match.
It was. Okay, I thought it was. That's why I was like, I thought that was Monsters Ball because I know it was always a interesting structure. But like I said, you even in your moments, man, when you did win matches, you still did a lot of dope spots. And took a lot of spots too. So it's like, it balances it out, it balances it out. But I do find that hilarious that you pick the matches you lost as like, hey, those are big pride,
Yeah, who cares? I don't care. It's not, you want to give the best matches to the fans. Those are the best matches, It's to me, like I took my ego out of it a long time ago, as far as not that I didn't, need to be pushed and be used as a star, not that way, but I took it out as in the sense of like I didn't buy my own hype, you know what I mean? Like I didn't, because like I wasn't a mark for myself,
Absolutely.
So and that's and that happens to everybody at some point in their career. Like, it happened to me early in my career, and luckily I got over it really quick. But I mean, it's weird. That's a whole other topic. But suffice to say that I lost my train of thought. Too many chair shots to the head. And
listen, it's all good, Raven. Listen, we thank you so much, man, because you've been an amazing individual to talk to. I know the fans appreciate it. I definitely appreciate it. And like I said, man, personally, it's always great to meet someone like yourself virtually. We'd love to meet you in person for sure. That's an off-air conversation. But to you fans out there listening, again, this is what I enjoy doing, is talking to talent, talking to people who are fans like myself, or vice versa, man, just bringing you every side of the spectrum as much as possible, from the talent to the fans to the casual viewer, all of that. Y'all know how we do on this show. So that being said, Raven, I know you're probably not the biggest social media kind of person, but in case people want to follow you,
I basically just do Twitter at the Raven Effect.
Twitter at the Raven Effect. Okay, perfect. So,
and my podcast is the Raven Effect Podcast. Comes out every Monday. You can find it everywhere. It's we don't talk about wrestling that much because that's all I talk about, for 30 years, Yeah. So we talk about everything but wrestling. It's wrestling adjacent.
Okay, cool. There's nothing wrong with that. I've followed a lot of wrestlers with their podcasts that do some of the same thing, because I get it. When you've been in the business, you want to talk about other cool stuff. So I get that.
And plus, I don't watch the sport anymore. So, I wouldn't know what's going on anyway,
Oh man, that's okay. Have you ever has AEW reached out to you for any appearances that you know of as of late yet? Like,
not that I know of.
Okay, because I know they did an ECW appreciation. It was kind of off air, but they did it with I know they had Taz.
Yeah, they had guys who were in the company already.
Yeah, guys who were in the company. I was just wondering if they ever thought, because I know Tony looks like he tries to pay respect to every part of the business. So even with ECW, WCW, anything like that, I know they're doing it with Owen Hart in the future and stuff like that. So I was just wondering if possibly they ever tried to reach out to you just to make an appearance or even manage someone at some point, like somebody that's got like a Raven-like feel to them in the future, So no, that's it. Maybe one day I might have spoken a little prophecy there, Raven. I don't know. You never know, man.
Maybe.
If I see you on a Dynamite or a Rampage one day, I'll be like, uh-oh, Raven, I told you, man.
Yeah.
So, but nonetheless, Raven, thank you so much for joining us here on the show. And man, definitely salute to you, sir. phenomenal career, phenomenal time. Thank you for everything you've done to the business and for the business. And yeah, man, ladies and gentlemen, y'all already know how we do. This is the part of the show where we say thank you. And of course, I want to see all of y'all out there throw up those too sweet signs because this is our official Too Sweet Peas. Y'all
take care, man. Thank you.